I'm going to start here in 1 minute. Thank you all for attending. If you want to check any technical issues you have now, make sure you can hear me or not. If you'd like to communicate in the webinar chat, just to kind of note that you can hear me, or if you have any issues that I can help mitigate, just please let me know, and I will do so to the extent I can. We will start shortly.
Right, Brandon, I'm going to do just a quick intro and then I'm going to hand it over to you, okay? All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the 2023 Nebraska Juvenile Justice System Annual Report Overview and Highlights. My name is Mary Pat Coe and I am with the Nebraska Court Improvement Project and I'm your host today. As many of you know, CIP is a federally funded program that exists in all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. In a nutshell, our goals here at CIP is system improvement for our youth and families and to bring you and other court stakeholders the best education that we can. In furtherance of that goal, today Brandon Helding, a project specialist with the AOCP Division of Research and Data, is going to provide an overview of the 2023 Juvenile Justice System Annual Report. A few housekeeping matters until I hand it over to Brandon is please put any questions you have in the Q&A, and if you could include the slide number that your question refers to, that will help us because we are not going to take questions till the end. And the CLE activity number will be provided at the end of the webinar. Brandon, it is all yours.
Thank you, Mary Pat. As she pointed out, my name is Brandon Helding. I'm for the Administrative Office, of course, of Probation. I'm a Research and Data Specialist. I work with Hazel Delgado and her team in Research and Data, and we're just going to go through on the 2023 Juvenile Justice System Statistical Annual Report. I know it's a very exciting title. We're going to go through it, and I'm going to try to make it as interesting as I can. And there's going to be some polls. I will go through and show you what I mean. If you would like to access the report, I would strongly recommend you do so either at this link or QR code. And when you scan the QR code, it will pop up with with your phone or tablet, or even with a viewer online, it'll bring up a little box, and you can click on it. You can click on that box, and it'll open up a window, and that window will be very much like the window you see on the right-hand side of your screen there. Or you can join at slido.com directly, or at the URL that I provide directly, and enter the code. So in this case, you can cut and paste this code into your browser, and this comes up. Then you can scroll through it. You can download it. You can print it. You can do whatever you'd like with it. That way, you can follow along. That QR code will come up again and again because we will reference the report several times and in different sections. So we're going to hold questions into the end, as Mary Pat pointed out, but there will be polls and or questions provided to you to just kind of get a gauge for where you are and what you understand or don't understand, and to hopefully improve engagement in something that could otherwise be dry, and we're going to avoid that. So again, this is our QR code. You'll see that if you click on this, the box with a series of boxes within it, or if you go to Slido and you enter that number, and we are going to go and try that right now. So if you would, take a picture of that box with your phone, and it'll open up a browser, or go to slido.com. I see one person has responded, and enter that number. Okay, we have eight responses. People are okay. There are 76 people here. Wow. Impressed by the attendance. Thank you all for attending. We'll take another 30 seconds or so here. If anybody has any persistent issues, please put them in the chat so that we know that they're occurring. Give them 20 seconds. We have 38 of 78 responses. So I'm going to wait till we have a few more. Looks like we're converging on somewhat comfortable, however. And you will see these results in real time. There will be other questions that don't require, they aren't Likert type questions where you won't have to click a certain selection. There'll be word clouds, and you'll just type in a word that comes to mind based on a certain prompt I provide. And there will be a zero stakes race at the end to be fun. I promise. Okay, 10 more seconds, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, looks like most somewhat comfortable, although we had a fairly even distribution across the other responses. The fewest were very uncomfortable, but there were some. That's understandable, and they were very comfortable. That's understandable, and particularly comfortable or not uncomfortable. I can understand that one as well, because especially to the extent reports are very different from one report to another. So the structure of this webinar, we're going to start with statewide data, and then we're just going to show District 4 and District 6 next to one another. And that's so that you can see how these data are broken down into separate districts. It's not that these districts are necessarily the same. It's just that we're going to show that these data are broken down. And we're going to go through specific sections of the report, which is why I strongly recommend you open that report. Now, that QR code will come up again with links. It is based on an existing statute from 2024. This report is required. It contains all sorts of information about juvenile justice and juveniles. And this includes things like status offenses, juvenile delinquency, truancy, all sorts of things that the kids do, and we extracted them, we counted them, and we tabulated them. And we tabulate from a system called Cognos, and that draws from two primary sources. One is the Supreme Court's justice system. That's where all the court data is entered. And then from the probation, and we call that MPACS. You can read the whole acronym there if you want. And That's where the probation data comes from. Those two things are in different parts of the report. And then in one section of the report, they're combined in a very awkward way. We'll go through that specifically so you can see where these data come from. We collected demographic information when it's available. These demographic information are never assumed. They're always entered by the court clerks based on confidential documents from the county prosecutor or from the prosecutor. They're never assumed, no matter how obvious it may seem. So there will be some demographics that are just marked as unknown. It's a naturally occurring issue. Am I cutting in and out? Does anybody else have a problem with that? Okay. Thank you, Tracy, for addressing that. Now we're going to go back to recidivism. If only because it's a topic of interest, and I know it's a topic of interest because we get a lot of requests for it in research and data. That QR link, QR code, that box again, if you scan it, it'll bring up the report. If you cut and paste that URL in, it'll bring up the report. And in general, we're using, well, not in general, specifically and always in this case, we are using the Supreme Court official definition of recidivism. And that is that within 1 year of successfully being released from probation, a juvenile has a different conviction, a class W misdemeanor, or a final conviction as an adult in terms of other statutes. Now, those other statutes are Nebraska Revised Statutes 43-247, subsection 1 and 2. I'm not going to go through those because that's not the purpose of this report. But if you so choose, that is the definition of recidivism that we are going to proceed with, regardless of how other organizations may define it. An important thing to note is status offenses. We're going to go through those in greater detail later. Again, this QR code will bring up the actual statute if you're so interested. And that will basically, it's just things that are considered infractions for kids, but not if they were adults. Things like truancy. That's a problem for children, not children so much as students, rather than adults, because they're not truant from school. So I would like you to think about this report in the abstract, mind you. I know you haven't read the report yet, or at least probably haven't. And if you have, it's probably still daunting, because it's daunting to me even. It's long. But if you go to this QR code or go to slido.com and enter that number, just enter some words, any words. You can enter as many words as you'd like, mind you, that come to mind when you scan this report. Or overwhelming, yes, overwhelming, absolutely. It's very long. Very long. There's equity, yeah, yes. Status quo, interesting. Stress. Good answer. Challenges. Mm-hmm. Disheartening. Yes. Parts of it are very disheartening. Strategy. Troublement. If you'll note, there aren't a lot of positive words in here. And that's okay. I mean, that really is okay. I'm hoping that at the end of this webinar that some of these words do become more positive, and you can see this report as a call to action, as a way of using information to generate insights and change policies even, and check for how you are improving in your districts or across the state. Reality. Yes. I'll give it another 25 seconds here, getting people typing still. My timer. Generalities. We're going to get into some specifics too. I think that'll be interesting for you. We're going to move from generalities to specifics. That'll be an important bit of how we drill into data, districts especially. Understandably, statistics is very dominant. Detail, yes, yes. Okay, I'm gonna getting people the box. It's interesting. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, thanks everyone. So we're looking at a lot of not negative words, but a lot of words that require that indicate challenges for people with this report. It's primarily detailed statistics. I totally understand that, but it's also it describes the difficulty of juvenile justice in Nebraska. The data discrepancy is interesting. I'm curious to know how that is either resolved, unresolved, or it exists post hoc as an existing question. I'm hoping to resolve those kinds of issues. So these slides will contain calculations, fair warning, but they're going to be very simple, I promise. So if we have an event at time 1, someone eats an apple. Event at time 2, someone eats an orange. And we're trying to tell the difference between those 2 events. It's just time 2 minus time 1. That's it. So that's the entire equation. But that does become complicated when we look at, say, age at the time of disposition, because we're using date of birth as our reference and date of disposition as our time event 2. That's our event that we're counting up to. Now, this counting the date we count up to will change based on what we're measuring the time between, whether it's date of birth between disposition or probation or what have you, as you will see in subsequent slides. Here's some brief examples when we look at youth probation, out of home placements, motions to revoke, and you can see how these will be calculated, and they will be calculated between 2 different time periods. So you can see age at the first submission to out of home placement during that calendar year. You can see the age at which the motion was revoked during that calendar year. These are all on page 350 of the report. You can go through them all in greater detail. We have probation revoked, status factor release, length of probation. Again, page 350, you'll see how all those different calculations occur. And they should all be detailed in there. And if they are not, you please tell us and we can add them. Okay, we're going to compare numbers. And this slide is intentionally confusing. It's because I want to put us all on the same footing. When we look at numbers in the abstract, admittedly, it's really hard to know what we're talking about without context. And I would argue that without any context, in the absolute absence of any other information, we don't know what these numbers are. And when we start comparing them, it's very natural to layer on our assumptions. And as a consequence, make conclusions that aren't necessarily true, or make conclusions that are accidentally true, but then are weirdly justified. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the different sections of this report. And there are different. Part A, if you go back to that report, you'll see in the table of contents, you have petitions and adjudication, the prosecutions in criminal court, motions to transfer, probations, access to counsel, and lastly, recidivism. And we're going to go through all of those. And we're going to go through some of them, not all of them, because going through all of them would take us all day. And we're going to go through the most interesting bit, in our opinion. And if you have any further interests or concerns, please contact me and I will do my best to explain what I can. So if you go to this QR code, again, you will you will go directly to the report. If you go to part B, it's on page 3 of the report. That's where we're going to start. And these are juveniles prosecuted in criminal court. And they are organized. I'll give you 5 seconds to go there if you so choose. And I'm not going to read these pages of the report to you. I was at a conference once and they did that, and it was quite mind-numbing. So I will avoid doing that. I will, however, point out statistics and numbers inside tables because they are particularly interesting, or because of how they are represented and how they are added up matters with respect to how we interpret them. So these are all statewide results. We're going to start with exclusively statewide results. We have divided up into age groups, the types of infractions, whether it's traffic, misdemeanor, felony. We're just using these bins. We're just asking if the cases appear in those bins. We have 14 to 15-year-olds, specifically within age groups, 16 and 17-year-olds. And then we have these demographics. And I should be clear that these demographics are how they are collected in justice. These are not demographics that when we were putting this report together, we're like, are really interesting, and we're just going to invent these on the fly. This is how they're entered into justice. So these are the categories that we are given. And then we have sex. Again, this is collected in justice, and we only have the sex at birth. We don't have identified genders or anything more nuanced than that. Perhaps we should, but we don't in justice. And then we can compare specific groups of race, specific race and ethnicities. We can compare, say, Native Americans, and you'll notice that there's only 2 Native Americans in the whole state, and they have 2 felony cases. Right, they're at 100% all the way to your right. We have much greater diversity of types of cases across Asians and Pacific Islanders, American Pacific Islanders. And again, with Black, Hispanic, and white individuals, you can see how these percents change within the traffic, the misdemeanor, or the felony. They vary, just as you would expect anything to vary naturally across groups. This is again where we're not quite sure, or the court clerk entered other, and we have 1 misdemeanor, 1 traffic. See the 50% and 50% represented there. It counts for 1% of those in the whole state. And then we have female, and then some are unknown. These aren't entered by the court. They weren't available in confidential documents. We And since the clerks are not going to assume, even if they've seen that person before, even if they are good friends with that person, they will not assume that unless it is presented to them. Then these are unknown, and go down to men, and then we got unknown again. These are again unknown, even if the court clerk knows this person intimately, and they will not assume that ever. And then totals. Totals are going to be interesting. And I'm going to go through totals in great detail next, because you'll notice totals don't always add up. The columns don't always add up to 100%, and that's intentional. And there's reasoning behind that. I'm going to go through that very soon. So I would like you to speculate, however, on why you think we don't do columns and rows that always add up. Why wouldn't we do that? I'm just curious why you think we would do that, because as readers of the report, I can understand why that would be confusing. I can understand that. Okay, I got 18. I'll give us a minute here to all respond. There are approximately there are many people many attendees, and I'm going to give people a response, an opportunity to respond. I have 26 responses so far. Looks like the dominant answer is those represent subgroups in the entire column. Everyone believes we can do math. That's excellent. I'm glad about that. Oh, okay. One person doesn't. One person has no one has any idea. Yeah. Okay. Okay. They do believe we can do math. All right. Glad to know. We do occasionally get questions about why things add up the way they do, and that's a very legitimate question. And it's why almost precisely we're going through this report, so that we can understand collectively how these things add up and why they make sense and what sense they do make. All right, I'm gonna stop the poll at this point. That was just to get a sense of where we are. Oops. Okay, so we're going to consider the total. That's 100%. Within that age group, all of those cases add up to 100%. Okay. Those do not add up to 100% because we are counting age groups, race and ethnicity, and sex. It naturally, people will have an age and an ethnicity and a sex. That means they will be counted potentially 3 times in here. That means you cannot add these up to 100%. If we look, though, at American Indians only, they add up to 100% as long as we omit the total. Mind you, the total here is not included. These are just the traffic, misdemeanor, and felony cases. This is not 100%. And we're going to consider why these totals are the way that they are. So we're going to look for horizontal lines. This is the horizontal lines we're talking about. Oops, sorry. The horizontal lines. The horizontal lines are where we're going to be looking at totals primarily, and there will be some vertical columns also that we were looking at, but they won't always necessarily sum 100%. They only sub within subgroups, as you all pointed out quite correctly on that poll. These numbers often represent groups and subgroups. So we're going to look at the 100%. That is not 100%. because it looks at just the felony cohorts, just the felonies. These are all the cases. You will, of course, add to 100%, 100%, 100%. And you'll recommend these equal 100% as well, but only because we're counting across the different age groups. They only equal 100% for traffic, misdemeanor, felony cases if we count the specific rows, only 14 to 15-year-olds. But if we count the total case of all of those in age groups, we get 100%. Or we count the rows, but we count the rows separately on the right-hand side. So you can't quite compare the rows with those blocks on the left-hand side. And that'd be interesting to the extent that you want to break these data down. So you might look at the age group overall, find some differences that are interesting within a district, and then want to break it down into those age groups. And then you can by simply moving your attention over to the right-hand side of the screen and comparing these different lines. Again, 100%. This is 100%. 100%. 100%. Now we're going to consider ones that are not 100%. So this is not 100% because it counts across age group and ethnicity. As we talked about, these people will probably have an age and an ethnicity, and they will be double counted. So you cannot count across those things. This will add to more than 100% of the cases, be more than 100% of the people involved. Again, here you will have more than the number of cases because you are talking about all the people across felonies and misdemeanors. And again, these are not going to add up to 100% at the bottom. Same reason, we're counting within subgroups. Not 100% because here we are including, it almost looks like it should be, but we're including the total as well, that percent of total in that column. You'll notice here there's a percent of total, and we cannot include that. We can only include traffic, misdemeanor, felony cases. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. So now that we've done that activity and you can see how much fun it is to read these reports, I would like you to do it one more time and see if you have any new thoughts about this or other technical reports. They are complicated, yes. And I'm going to give us a minute on that one as well, like we did last time. God, just love them. Yes. Yes. And the fact they are complicated is a great just method of madness. Excellent answer. The fact that they are complicated is a testament to why this kind of webinar is necessary. Visuals would be helpful, yes. Using. Can be. Charts are an excellent piece of feedback for us. That is not most people responding, but that was a little over a minute, so we're going to stop because we have a lot of slides to go through. With one person typing. Okay, so we're going to go to part B. You want to go to the report? Again, I strongly urge you to go to the report, click on that QR code, and go to page 4. Because as we go through these, referencing the actual tables will be extremely useful, not just for your own reference now and for understanding the presentation, but also for potentially answering questions later or making meaning of it in a reasonable way. So we're going to go right to that next table. This is just taken directly from the report. These tables are not adjusted in any way. They're just magnified for the size of the screen and taken from the report as screenshots. We have race and ethnicity again. We have sex again. It's like before. These are as recorded in justice. And we have the same issues with totals. These issues with totals don't go away. Not equal to 100% because we're not accounting American Indians in there. You can see that 50% is not included in there. That should be included because it's one of the race and ethnicities that we collect. This is 100% because we're adding a cross column, and the number of people will have, all people will have one of probation, jail, or prison. And they add up to 100%. None in jail. That's promising, I think. Most probation, 65%, 35% prison. Again, these numbers are descriptive, and to interpret them directly, you will have to go investigate those cases and figure out why these people end up in the places they end up. And that's certainly an interesting next step after you read a report. Here we don't have 100% because we're adding total cases, and we have that 19 and 8% on the very left. That is associated with all the people in those age groups, not all the people in that row. Again, I know that's confusing, but this is how we drill down into the data. So we go, these are the rows. So we're drilling down into the 16-year-old, and we're looking at those who go to jail. And these do not add to 100% because not all people are going to go to jail. And in fact, many of them will have people have race and ethnicities and age groups and sexes. And so we can't just add them up because they're not individual people. They're people with characteristics. Same here. We can't add across jail and prison because we're adding across ages and ethnicities. We can't be adding in that way again. And those totals will come up again and again, those issues of totals, and we're going to practice how those totals are implemented and how we might come across those things. Next, we're going to go, this is going to start to get repetitive, but we will break this into a piece when we start talking about separate districts and then specific information that might be more applicable to your current situation or current location. And but right now we're going to go to part D, the probation data. And these are now no longer coming from the court, mind you. These are now coming from impacts or our probation database. And this is page 6 of the report. I, again, strongly urge you to go to that report, and you'll see this wonderful data table. It's very much like the previous one. That is not 100% because we're counting Hispanic in with race. And you'll notice that wasn't previously broken out in justice. That is that separated ethnicity from race is an artifact of the impact data entry requirement. And the merits of that are certainly debatable. But in this report, we can only give you what the system has in it. And this is how these things are coded. So unlike in the court records, you can't just add Hispanic into the ethnicity, even if you really think it is a race. And these things are socially constructed, so there will be confusion about them. Again, not equal to 100%. These are still not equal to 100%. And we have statewide data. We have these classic things. They don't add to 100%. Same with juvenile probation, risk level and length of probation. I know I went through that last one quickly, but if you have any questions, we can certainly go through that because here we're adding across subgroups, age groups, sex, race, and ethnicity, and people are going to have more than one of those. People are going to have a sex and an age group, and so you can't just add across them and count them multiple times and expect them to add up to 100%. These are statewide data. Again, I want to emphasize that because we are going to get into district data, and that will change the scope of the kinds of interpretations that you may or may not want to make, especially if your primary concern is a district, and that is certainly the case with many. Again, probation data. When we look at risk levels, these are the risk levels of kids when they are placed on probation in that first column. In that first column here, youth discharge from probation and the average length of probation. So a youth will have a risk level when they're placed on probation, when they are discharged from probation, and they will have an average length of probation. So if we just add up all the 11 to 13-year-olds across that whole row, we're going to be counting people more than once because they will have an average length of probation and a risk level and an assessment or not an assessment. So if we're counting people multiple times, we're still going to add up things that are not 100%. And you'll notice here we didn't even include percents because they stop being meaningful after a certain point. We do have age groups, per usual. These are the age groups. We have sex as defined in MPACS. We have that at birth. We do not have identification of gender. We don't have that. We can't report it because we don't have it. And then we have race and ethnicity, but you'll notice these are clustered together. That is again impact. That is the data system that it comes from. Justice includes those. The court records include those based on the confidential documents. Again, not the assumptions of court clerks. This separates them. So we have youth placed on probation, average length of probation, and all details that you may want to know. So you may want to look at emails that are put on probation. And you can see that there were 801 in 2023 with an average length of 10.1 months. You can see that 25 of them had no assessment, and 21 of them had no assessment when they were a different risk level. So there's an issue with youth who are discharged from probation and the number of assessments they have, and the youth placed on probation and the number of assessments they have. That seems to differ. So perhaps assessments aren't being given both when they're discharged and placed on probation. Otherwise, those numbers would presumably be the same. We're going to move right along. I realize that you can pick apart that table forever. And I indeed expect some people will, because these data are very important. But right now, we're just trying to get a sense of the overall report. And we're going to move on to page 2. This is petitions and adjudication. We're going back to court data. I again encourage you to use the QR code to get this report, go through it, and reference it, because scrolling through the report itself is an exercise in understanding. And that's just an important bit of being able to flip back and forth between bits of information. We have a data table. I'm not even going to go through this one for you. I'm going to trust that I'm going to give you 30 seconds to look at that just by yourself, because I think you have the tools at this point to just kind of look through that and gather a sense of it. We're looking at rows, we're looking at race and ethnicity, because probation data, think about totals don't always add up to 100%, because we cannot count across categories. Some are unknown. Court clerks don't assume things. And when we have all of that information, we make conclusions, and those conclusions can be multifaceted. We're going to go to juvenile. Lastly, we're going to go to juvenile recidivism. This I save for last because these data don't come only from courts or only from NPACs. They kind of come from both. There is work on the back end, technical work that requires a great detail of a great amount of time and detail-oriented programming, and it is not easy. So whenever we often get asked about recidivism, because it's interesting, and admittedly it is, but these data are very difficult to extract and report sensibly. We do in this report, for example, report on it, but those data requests are often very difficult. All right, other sections we didn't go through. Part B, we didn't go through that. We didn't go through Part E, access to counsel. We just don't have time to go through it all. We're halfway through already, and we're going to go straight to the district section. Fun transition. I know it's a very exciting transition, but what's coming up? We're going to go to District 4 and District 6, where these are going to be comparisons between two districts, but I want to make sure that you don't think one district can be directly compared to another district, because these districts are so different one between another. So they're not necessarily comparable. You could compare two districts if they were exactly the same in every other way, besides a certain demographic or besides a certain number. But these districts are not the same in every other way. So any comparison you make where you say one is greater than the other, therefore X, Y, and Z, when you talk about that X, Y, and Z, we talk about that result is a consequence of not just the differences between the numbers that you're looking at, but also the differences that naturally occur between the districts. So, for the sake of just comparison and understanding them and looking at more than district at once, we have District 4. And you'll notice there is no age groups that's 16 in District 6. That would suggest that you cannot compare 14, 16-year-olds in one district to another district, precisely because they don't exist. They aren't counted in another district. Again, the percentages aren't going to add up in the same way. They're going to add up to 100%, sure, but there's different numbers of cases. One has 6 cases. One has many more. One has 152 cases. And we're going to do 100 District 4 and District 6, as we talked about. These are page 84 and 125, respectively, in the report. Again, if you would like to go to the part we're going to go through first, it's going to be Part A. This is we did before, petitions and adjudication. That will be on this QR code again. Strong urge you to go there, page back and forth, maybe perhaps pick District 6 or District 4 if you can follow along. Or not, and then we're going to go through it, and if you have any questions after, again, let me know. So we have age groups here, as we talked about. 16-year-olds were not included, were not noted in the District 6. So District 6 is fundamentally different than District 4. So the idea of comparing one to the other is kind of comparing apples to cars or apples to blocks of cheese, because they're just fundamentally different things. Some of those categories will appear in both districts, and that is naturally occurring because 14 to 15-year-olds do occur in both districts. Race and ethnicity, you'll notice, appears as white and unknown in District 4, but in District 6 has a whole variety of responses. And if we only compare those first 2 rows and make a direct comparison, we are not comparing the same thing at all. We are, in fact, counting a very small number of the total people with recorded race and ethnicities in District 4 as we are in District 6. We do have some that overlap, of course, and they do add up to 100% within their district. Notice the white people do add up 100% in their district, and as do white people in their other districts. But because the districts are different, comparing one to the other, comparing the 5 cases to the 31, changes the arithmetic of how we make assumptions and how we make conclusions. Sex appears in both of them, as you might expect. There were unknowns, however, in District 6 that were not noted in District 4. So again, comparing those total numbers, because you don't have unknowns in the one district, suggests that there might be underlying differences in District 6. You can check female and male, as we've done before, but again, notice there are different numbers of males in each category and different numbers of females in each category. And that makes the district different things. So this is not District 4 versus District 6. This is not a competition to see who has a lower percentage. This is information about these districts that you can take to these districts and take to the people in your district, the courts in your district, or the people who are interested in what happens in your district, and make interpretations that are interesting and useful and productive and hopefully provide feedback. We have the same issues with totals as we had before, and we need to note these. You cannot count across groups still. I know we would really like to. I would like to count across groups, but we can't. Not equal to 100%. Not equal to 100%. Not equal to 100%. Not equal to 100%. They're just, because we're counting across groups. People are going to have an age and have an ethnicity and you probably have a sex, and they're not going to, unless it's unknown, in which case they're going to be counted 3 times. So just add up to 100%. And that's unfortunate for our natural ability to interpret these tables and see them. But so we have to make an intentional effort to look at these age groups, which equal 100%. Race and ethnicity, which equal 100%. The sex, which equals 100%. Over here, similarly, we have age groups, race and ethnicity, and sex. They add up to 100% within those subgroups, within age group, or race and ethnicity, or what have you, and across the number of categories. You'll notice in District 4 how there are more categories of race and ethnicity recorded than in District 6. Next, we're going to go through Part B, juvenile prosecuted, just like we did before. This is going to start getting faster, just so you know. Again, QR code, strongly urging you to go there, page 88, 141. Check it out. Go to 4 or District 6, either one. And I would like you to go to this Slido and just look at District 4 or District 6, either one, and just indicate anything you think is interesting inside those districts. Could be with the totals, could be with the numbers, could be with percentages, could be with missingness, could be with unidentified people. Again, I'm going to give us maybe a minute and just to kind of peruse, minute and a half, let's say, to peruse those tables and just kind of decide what you think is interesting. And if you don't have the report pulled up and you don't have the tables queued up, then you can just put, I need to look at the tables in the future. There's no, right? There's no high stakes here. Different populations, yeah. I mean, yeah, the different districts are different populations of people. That's right. Rural and suburban, yeah, those are very real differences. In fact, rural versus suburban is one of the reasons we picked District 4 and District 6, so we could compare just see how numbers are different between two very different districts, and not so that we compare rural and urban categories, but so that we could see how we have broken this into districts that have very different naturally occurring features, being very rural, being very urban. 10 more seconds. We're going to move on. We have a lot to cover, and basically we have a lot to cover. All right. Now we're going to go to part A. You want to go back to District 4 and District 6. You're already there. We have age groups, different populations, as you pointed out. Sexes are calculated, not associated with those who are identified, because that's not in our justice system. We only know what the clerks get from confidential documents from prosecutors. We have no idea what they actually were based on an assumption the clerk made, or even if the clerk knows, but we're certain outside the context of that court case how they identified. It doesn't matter. It's not in the court documents. They don't include it. We have race and ethnicity again. And then we have totals again. If you'll notice, we did not go through recidivism. We did not go through juvenile prosecuted in criminal court. We were sentenced. And we did not go through juveniles with access to counsel. Those things all appear in each district, except for recidivism. Recidivism does not appear for each district. It's a special case. I threw that in there just to throw a wrench into things. Recidivism does not appear in districts. The rest of them do. And so if you want recidivism, you got to look at the state level data. Okay, we got to join the quiz. I have people who have already joined the quiz. Nice. Okay, you're joining the quiz. Please, everyone, join the quiz. We're going to look at the numbers. No, it's especially exciting. Put an acronym in there. I love the colon or semicolon. AL div. 4, just number 4. Okay, yeah. Thing, I guess. I'll give people a second here to join the quiz and start thinking about any questions you have. Those questions will start. We're going to get to a question and answer period here in just a bit, and then I will endeavor to answer these questions and give some time for that. When we talk about AI, we talk about questions. I hope AI did join. I'd like to see how AI responds to this report. That would be curious. I guess it could be Al. Should listen to AI. Probably Al. I'll give one more minute for people to join and think about any questions you have. Think about specific data tables we went through. Think about why totals make sense or don't make sense, or even why you think the report could be improved. You can always use feedback. It's statutory, so some of the information has to be in there. But we could can always use feedback. We can't always address it, but we can always use feedback. Okay, I'm going to go on. You can still join the quiz later. You'll see that QR code and that Slido link there. So you can always join as we go through this. And I would like you to look at how many more filings for status defense for 16-year-olds were there in District 4 than in District 6. I know it's a fun question. Requires looking up information. I'm going to give us let's just go through. Let's just do a minute here, or a minute and a half. Yeah, scroll through this a little bit. The hint is that those table contents will bring those up. Also, we already talked about them in the PDF. If you can't find them, then this will just be a frightfully boring experience, and we'll go to the next question where it will be easier to find the number. Okay, we have 20 seconds left. We're going to see who wins. I forgot to say this is a competition with absolutely no prize and no consequences and absolutely no identifying information except who wins. So all you can do is win. You can't lose. So we have 5 seconds left. Okay. 17. That was the predominantly. 19. Now I got 19. 2 was the correct answer. Only 2 people got it. Well, it's okay. Frightfully boring. RDH 1. I don't know who that is, but they won and they got their first 8 seconds. Impressive. Now we're going to go through cases cited without counsel in Buffalo County. Go to Buffalo County. You'll find if you go to that table of contents, or you can go to it'll be that, I think table E, section E is without counsel. I'll give you another minute here, and then we'll go through. Minute and a half, we'll say, because we didn't go through this line item before. And I'll give people some more time. I should give people more time on this, because to be fair, we didn't go over this table before. So, for example, I have 6 of 43 responses. Let's see if we can get up hundreds of responses. It is table E. Juvenile without counsel. I'm scrolling through it myself, just get a sense for how long this takes. I suspect it takes more time than I think, if only because there's a lot of data. You are right, this is long. And every time I look at this, I do realize how long it is. It's always notable. But to that extent, there's a lot of data in the state. There's a lot of very interesting bits of information. And there's a lot of different people who are going to have to read this report and try to understand what's going on in their context. So all of this information is useful to someone, and it's all compiled in one report so that people have a common reference for this information. I have 13 responses. I'm going to wait. Ooh. 30 more seconds. As I go through this itself. And I am paging through it page by page, and that is not efficient. So I'm going to go back up to the table of contents. Use that to my advantage. And we're going to call time. Okay. 5 was the correct answer. And let's see who won. RDH won again. Nice. 8 seconds. 8 seconds. Sounds fast. I don't know if I could have gotten to it in 8 seconds. I'm impressed. We're going to go through only a few more. I promise these are almost over. And they'll get funnier too. They'll get more fun. I don't think it's funnier, but they'll get more fun to answer. In Kearney, on more males who dropped offenses than females. In Sarpic. Five responses. And I do apologize in real time for any typos or miscommunication or ambiguities in here. They seem to inevitably plague me every time I do a presentation or a webinar of any kind. So something kind of lingers. But my best attempts and peer review and all the checks and balances I put into it. And again, thank you all for responding, participating. I know it's a lot, and I know it's dense. We'll give 1 more minute and a half to look that up. These student, I'm only laughing because I'll get the occasional message like, I'm not playing because I don't want to win. Because they've been through this before and they've heard the presentation before. And I get that. Okay, we have 30 seconds left to see who gets it correct and who gets it first. See if they can beat their 8 seconds. That's freaking amazing. 8 seconds is amazing, by the way. If you can scroll through this report for 8 seconds, that's impressive. I would have to use some kind of search, and you have to search these. You need to change them all to text. I'll go through that later. I should bring that up. Okay, so we're going to stop and we're going to go through. We have 10 being the dominant answer. 1 is the correct answer, however. Mick got it. I don't know who Mick is, or Mike. They got it in 3 minutes and 44 seconds. The 8 seconds didn't pull it out this time. 3 minutes and 44 seconds. That seems more reasonable to be looking for it, to be honest with you. So the leaderboard, we're at 3 of 4 questions. Mike has gotten 2 of the 3 correct, so they're currently winning. This is probably the last question. And then what comes next? So I'm curious to know where people are with it and what they believe comes next with this kind of report, because it is detailed, it is long. And again, I will get the questions as soon as we are done with this. I'm going to give this question, I believe, is much easier to answer. So I'm only going to give 30 seconds. Yeah, see where people are with it. And this presentation is being recorded, so if you'd like to watch it on repeat forever, all yours. I hope. That'd be weird if I was that entertaining, but yeah, that's all. If you like it, that's for you. I use this revert selectively. No one said just please let me leave or wants to watch the presentation again. Understandable. They were all correct, technically. Can't really get this one wrong. Nick got 4 minutes and 7 seconds altogether. He won the game. Okay. Now we have questions or concerns. And I would like you to type your questions and concerns in this box. If you go to this Slido, you will see questions and concerns. Oh, sorry. That didn't work out as I anticipated. Technical error, isn't it? You go here and put in your comments or concerns, and I'm going to tabulate them and see where we are and see what kinds of questions I can answer that cover the most amount of issues for the most amount of people.
Brandon, we do have one question in the Zoom Q&A, and that is, how do you recommend we use this report?
I believe that depends on, and I know this is kind of a cop-out answer, but it depends on who you are. If you are a district chief, I suggest you go to your district and try to understand that. Or if you're curious if you're just curious about other districts, you can look at it. You can use the report in that way. If you're looking at statewide data, I think that's often very interesting to people. And then you have follow-up questions about specific districts within the state. I think you can then go into those specific districts within the state and see what kinds of information you have. Because all the districts, while you can't compare one district to another, they are collated in the state data. So the state data will be broken down into separate districts. And you can use that for summative purposes. You decide to just, is this true or isn't this true? Or formative purposes, is this kind of thing working? And you can compare reports over years. Is the thing working? Is perhaps a policy you have working better or worse over time? There are many, many ways to use this report, and I would suggest using it. I would suggest using it selectively. I think that's a reasonable response. I think using it for everything probably isn't going to help you to the extent that it doesn't have every piece of information available in there. There's obviously information that we don't have in there. For example, race and ethnicity are separated in impacts and not court data. So there's natural limitations. That's going to be a consequence of how data are collected and what we have to give you. We can only give you the data we have.
Brandon, we have another question. It's, how often does this report come out and where can I find it?
Each year it comes out, and I am going to give you an actual link that you can go to right on this slide. It's on the web page. It's on our web page with all the other reports. And just in case anyone wants to go there, I saw this. It's not even showing. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. So if you go to this website, you'll see it load up. You'll see it under publications and reports if you go to the nebraska.gov website. Gov. There we go. And you look up reports. You'll find it there.
Okay. 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 Everyone. Two, 6,
Mary Pat?
8.
For publications, we can search for annual case separate juvenile courts. Compensation. I'm looking for it. Annual statistical report. Find out. Here's 2000, or all the reports. We can go back all the way to 2015. Wow. Better title then. Better picture on the front cover there, didn't it? And here they have more graphs. You can see how things have changed over time. This is the one we just went through, 2023. You can go back however far you'd like. This, of course, also has, just for anyone else who's interested, all the different reports that we put out. And other juvenile reports might be interesting. We have juvenile case reports for separate juvenile courts, but this is the one we're talking about today. I'll bring it up just for the sake of having it open. This is what it will look like. It takes a long time. You should see the CLE activity number in the webinar chat. I believe Mary Pat just included that. Tracy Weber gave us the actual, thank you, Tracy, for giving us the actual link in the chat. That's excellent. I ended early, amazingly. I thought I was going to for sure go all the way to 1:30. So I have more time for questions, and I will stick around till 1:30 because that is what you signed up for, and I will absolutely answer any questions you have, and I will even stay late. And Mary Pat, did you want to wrap any of this up or say anything in conclusion?
Brandon, there was a question, I think that was supposed to come up online. It said on page 6, am I
Okay.
correct in reading that female juveniles have a significantly lower rate of successful probation completion? Any indication as to why this is?
We don't know why. We don't know. They had more motions. Men had more motions to revoke. Page 6. Placed on probation, there were more men. Sorry, I'm not seeing where that more females have. I mean, more of actual. No, I'm sorry. I don't quite see that. But more men were placed on probation. More males were revoked. Probation was revoked. Out of home placements, satisfactory releases. More men were satisfactorily released ultimately. I suppose that is an indication of an outcome. And To answer your other question about why, no, we don't know why. We really don't. That is the burden of quantitative tabulation of numbers and statistics and presentations. We can count things up, but to fully understand what's going on, we need to look at cases, we need to look at people, we need to do background research, and this is a true across disciplines. They have to go back and they have to examine people and cases and decide why things happen and examine context. And then if you go through all these different stages of research, you'll start to see why things happen with respect to numbers. And that's the research we see, like, oh, this was caused by this with 20% effect. Well, that's deceptively simple, because that requires context and people and data and numbers and sampling and all sorts of things that we just don't have access to right now. Not at least in this tabulation. These are just simply counts, and they're meant to be informative, but not necessarily dispositive.
Well, Brandon, I don't see any other questions. So with that, thank you so much, Brandon, for walking us through the report. It's a lot of numbers to get through. We appreciate you going through it with us. And thank you all for joining us. And as Brandon said, this is recorded and it will be out on the CIP YouTube page probably by next week. Thank you all for coming.